My name is Alex Fischer, and we're going to spend about half an hour together where I'll share ideas that really transform my life. And the great thing today is that you did not have to fly to Paris to be with me. You can just be right there on your iPad, on your computer, on your TV, on your phone, in California or anywhere else. And if you hover your mouse over your screen or tap the screen if you're on the phone, you'll see a speech bubble that is on the top corner over there. And that's where you can ask a question. I will not see the question. I will see them only at the end of our talk in about half an hour. So anytime you feel want to ask something, just type it. And my good friend Ed, who is taking care of technology today for us in London, will gather those questions and send those to me after our talk. Some of you may be watching us on the Facebook page. If you have a question, just type a comment in the comment section, and likewise, it will not interrupt my speech now. I'll see it at the end. So, why am I standing here today? Well, in a way, I should not be here. In a way, I should be in my law firm in Paris, having the life of a litigation attorney, which is how my life started. But I came across spiritual ideas. Spiritual ideas, they were not like a philosophy. The spiritual ideas, they were highly practical. In a nutshell, Christian Science. And as I crossed those ideas, then they became bigger and bigger, and I saw healings, and I saw situations that were difficult being resolved. And gradually, I naturally left my career as a litigation attorney just to spend my life sharing those ideas with others. And so I work as a Christian Science practitioner in France, helping anyone finding peace, health with those ideas. So the hope for today is that I can give you a snapshot of what Christian Science is all about. What is it not about? So that at the end of our time together, you can feel that you have a sense of how you can apply those ideas to a challenge that you may be facing. Maybe a financial challenge. Sadly, the pandemic seems to have brought many financial challenges on many of us. Or maybe a health challenge. Or I would say any challenge, maybe a challenge with a family, anything that really makes you lose a sense of peace, maybe being afraid a bit. So I'll share 3 experiences. I'll share first a physical healing that shows how, yes, today in the 21st century, healing through prayer is possible, can be consistent and applied universally by anyone. I'll also share an example of a financial situation that got resolved through this same method. And finally, I'll show an example of how we can find a way forward. Maybe it's even more prevalent today, how we can find a way forward where life seems to be stuck for us. Maybe COVID has changed our outlook completely. Our business is different. Our educational plan is completely shift. How can we find a way forward? I'd say that the answer to all those questions is about not having a sense of burden. It is not a method in the sense of you're going to learn something and then you're going to have to try and apply it. Actually, the method, Christian Science, helps you yield to a spiritual sense, yield to something that is already there. Christian Science was discovered by a woman called Mary Baker Eddy, who lived in the end of the 19th century, early 20th century. And in a way, no one would know anything about her today if she did not have that shift of thought. She had a difficult physical situation that she dealt with. She thought she was passing on. People around her thought she would not make it. And by using spiritual ideas found in the Bible, she was a deep Christian, she will be fully healed. And if we still talk about her today, it's because she did not accept that her fast healing was just a miracle. She intuitively felt that there were universal laws behind Jesus' teaching. One day I received a phone call from a lady, and she said that she knew nothing about Christian Science. She explained that she had a growth in the throat, and that was painful, and she didn't know what to do about it. And some friend told her to contact a Christian Science practitioner. So we talked on the phone, and the first thing I shared is something that I feel is critical, is that she was not guilty. We'll talk a lot about our sense of God, but God does not send disease. God does not test us. Actually, what is God? Well, that term can mean many things to many people. God is principle, the principle of the universe. Infinite love, something we've all felt. Love exists. Love is not a chemical reaction. Love must have a source, and that source is love itself. It's incorporeal, the big all. So as I talked to this lady about those ideas, she got interested, especially with the sense that she was not guilty. Because I don't know about you, but how often when we're faced with disease or financial challenge, most of us are very humble and we feel, well, what did I do wrong? Why am I punished now? Well, the key thing is you're not punished. Yes, we do grow out of challenges, but infinite love does not test us, does not send challenges. This woman will be fully healed. Actually, the next day she'll report that the growth is completely gone. Some of us who don't know about this method of healing would think that it was just luck or a miracle. But when you have healings after healings, and in my life, in my family, my children, my friends, I've seen so many healings that it does point to the sense of principle of ideas, universal ideas behind. So how does it work? If right now you're faced with a physical challenge, how can you go about it? Number one is to deal with fear. How do you deal with fear? Because I don't know about you, but sometimes we're faced with a challenge. It can be pain, it can look ugly. And on the top of this, we feel fearful. Fearful about the present condition and also about the future. What it will be in a week from now. What if? So I found very helpful when I started to pray to address the fear. To recognize the fear and to address it, not to ignore it or to work through it. The fear is the first thing that needs to go. So the question is, how do you handle fear? In a way, it is our choice to subscribe to a theory or another. One common theory says that, we can do nothing about fear, that fear is a chemical reaction in the brain that is helpful for animals. Well, that's a theory, and I don't find it accurate. I don't find it accurate. We can make wise decisions. We can move forward in life with our spiritual sense, with our intuition, without fear. So fear can go. The question is, how do you get rid of fear? The temptation is to battle fear, even to want it to take it away. If I use fear, if I use an image for fear, which can be darkness, and actually is it an accurate image? Because darkness is not something, although we see it. You open a dark closet, you can see the darkness. Your eyes see something, they see the darkness. But actually, darkness is not something. Darkness is the absence of light. When I say darkness is not something, physically, it has no temperature, it has no mass, you cannot measure it. It is really an absence. That's the same with fear. It is not something, it is just the belief in the absence of God, the belief in the absence of infinite good. And we can choose to turn towards the light, to turn toward the sense of God, the sense of love, and not focus on the fear. And I think it's hard sometimes, because I think fear sometimes has a almost hypnotic impression on our thoughts. That's all we see. So what I find helpful is to try to move away from the fear towards what we could say the light, spiritual ideas that helps us. I remember a mother who had been told that her newborn had a condition that needed immediate surgery. And she reported that she was gripped with fear. But she knew something of Christian Science. And she saw and she knew that she had a choice to make right there. She could either dwell on the fear, she could just stay there, or she could decide to do whatever she could do to try to grapple to get a better sense of God, better sense of infinite love. It was not a burden on her. It was not a burden on her. It was just a yielding to a higher sense. And that's what she did. And the surprising thing for her is that she will be able to sleep fully that night as her baby was taken away to the emergency room. And it was to be operated in a different hospital. So there was a lapse of several hours. When the baby reached the other hospital, they did more tests, but they found that there was nothing wrong with the baby anymore. They could not understand why. But this lady knew why. She had called a Christian Science practitioner. She had been praying by letting that light in, and she had noticed that the fear was gone, and baby was very healthy and remained healthy. They did all the medical checks and checkups and tests afterwards, and it's not understood from a medical standpoint, but from that standpoint, from a spiritual standpoint, it's fully understood. So some say, well, easily said than done. But actually, the burden is not on our shoulder. You know, there's a beautiful passage in the Bible, in Psalm 46, which is very reassuring. And at the end of it, it does give us kind of the recipe to move forward against fear. First is the reassurance. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore, will not we fear, though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea. Even if our world seems to be collapsing, just stay calm, just trust. And that's the passage I wanted to tell you. And I quote, "Be still and know that I am God. Be still." And sometimes it's the hardest thing to do, being still, but that's the way forward, is to be still, to let go of a sense of, I'm going to battle fear, I'm going to solve it with medical procedure or Christian Science or anything else. It's about being still and being listening. So now you can say, well, be listening to what? Well, be listening not to the physical senses, not to the appearance of the nightmare, but to be listening to that still small voice, this inner sense, this spiritual intuition, in a way, God's voice, we could say, that we all have, that is always there. Listen to this. To me, it's like the tick-tock of a watch. It's very fine sound, and it's always there. I mean, if you have a watch that does a tick-tock, but you may not hear it because of a willful sense of moving forward or because of other thoughts, but it's there. So as long as we know that the way forward is to listen to this still small voice, then that's the way forward. Then we're saved. Again, we're not guilty. We're not tested. But those challenges are an opportunity for us to demonstrate more of infinite love in our life. You know, one day I was at the office and my boss came to see me very early on in the morning. And she said, "Alex, stop on everything you're doing. The client is very concerned about something in his business." So it was a legal process that I was involved with. And he says, "Well, just work on this thing, forget everything else and work on this thing, and I'll come back later." So being a good boy and obedient, began to work on this. It was a legal research. It was not too hard to do, but it was kind of long. So I did this. But you know what surprised me is after about 20 minutes, I could feel something almost banging in my thoughts. I mean, it's an image, but there was something that was telling me to stop that research and work on something else. Again, the boss had said, "Don't work on anything else, work on this." There's pressure. I was not especially interested in being fired, but I knew that inner sense that we all have. It's not a Christian thing or a Muslim thing or an atheist thing. We all have this still small voice. It's our inner connection with the infinite, with the universe. So I was aware enough of this just to listen to it. So, you know, I was really conflicted. So I listened for a few minutes and then I felt, well, I can't stop and do this thing which has no relationship. It was also for this client, but it was supposed to happen much later. There was no need to do it now. And I remember even standing, it was an open office, and I remember standing, just not knowing what to do. My sense of duty and trusting what my boss was saying, the physical sense is the human picture, or trusting this more invisible sense. That was pretty clear. And in the end, I decided to yield. If some of you are familiar with the Bible, there's a great story in the Old Testament that you may have heard when you were a little boy, little girl, of Jonah. And Jonah basically has an intuitive sense. The Bible says God told Jonah, but has an intuitive sense to do something, but he doesn't want to do it. And he ends up in the belly of a whale, and in the end, he has to do it anyway. And it gets me the idea of God as a navigating system, just always leading us, as long as we let our ego aside, as we let our sense of self-will aside. So I knew that still small voice always brings good to you, to us, to anybody that hears it. So I decided to let go of what I was supposed to do and to work on this thing. I was not afraid anymore. It felt right. So I did it. I did it for maybe an hour and a half. So again, putting aside what I was asked to do, and instead working on this new thing for the same client. Around maybe 11 a.m., my boss came back and she said, "Oh, Alex, you just got to stop completely. Something happened with the clients and we have to completely stop. We're just to change orders. We have to work on this new thing, which is super urgent too. So just stop everything else and we got to have this answer as soon as we can." And as she was speaking, I remember this sense of, astonishment, because what she was asking me to do, I had it on my computer. That's the very thing I'd been working for an hour and a half. So I told her, and I said, "Well, look, it's done, it's there." So she looked and she's, "Okay, yeah, well done." And then that was it. And I think the day after, I received congratulations of the boss of my boss for my sense of initiative and discernment. So I was happy for the congratulations, especially because it was rare for the boss of my boss to be in touch with us. But it was not me. It was not me. It was just me being willing to listen. You know, the great thing that Mary Baker Eddy found when she looked back to the scriptures and especially Jesus' teachings is that we can say discovered, but we can say she understood that Jesus' spiritual ideas are not about habit, dogmas, petrified thought that we have to repeat. That spirituality, that deep spirituality, is very much alive. It's something alive and unique for all of us. It reveals our uniqueness and our unique relationship with the divine. But it's something that is not petrified, something that is really deeply alive. And in the Bible, you find many healings that Jesus did. But it never said that he alone could have those healings. He actually said the opposite. He said that whoever understands, whoever believes in me, whoever understands what I say, whoever understands that spirituality will be able to have and experience similar healings. And that brings me back to one of my favorite quotes in the book Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures, which is basically the book that Mary Baker Eddy wrote to explain all those ideas. It does not replace the Bible. It sheds a light on the deep spiritual component and spiritual meaning of the Bible. And my favorite quote is there in the preface. It says, it's only 6 words, and it says, and I quote, "The time for thinkers has come." The time for thinkers has come. She did not say the time for believers, followers, thinkers. It's all about thinking, understanding. And that's why when she had to find a term about this, basically going back to the deep spirituality in the Bible, she coined the term Christian, obviously, because we're going back to Jesus' spirituality, but science. Because you don't believe in math, you understand math, and then you prove math. Math is not a philosophy. It's not like 2 + 2 sounds nice. No, 2 + 2 has equal and universal application and is very practical. Well, can you believe this? That's the same for those spiritual ideas. They're practical, and all of us can understand them and apply them. And then the result is inner peace, more peace, and a sense of moving forward with a sense of life that is harmonious, where harmony is the norm. So it was no coincidence that in this job example that I was led to make the right decision. But if you go back to Jesus, when he explains how he was practicing those ideas, he says something very interesting. He says, I can do nothing of my own self. I can do nothing of my own self. Basically, he explains that his sense of spiritual perception, that it is really God doing the work. So that's a short phrase, God doing the work. It does mean that when we are aware of infinite love present wherever the challenge seems to be, when we yield to this divine presence, when we let go of our sense of ego, and when we listen to this still small voice, that creates a shift in consciousness. And that shift in consciousness results in a change in the human experience. And I would say it does that all the time, all the time. That's why it's the scientific aspect of it. When there's a change in consciousness, where our sense of the divine takes over, and it's not positive thinking or our own thinking, when it's our sense of infinite love, then the experience changes. Sometimes it's very fast, just like in the first example with the lady who had something in the throat. It's very fast. Sometimes it takes more time. One time I'd moved a country, and I was working in a legal capacity in a different country, and it was a great opportunity. And but I made some form of a mistake. I asked how much money I would be paid, what would be my salary, but I didn't check one key thing, which was how much rent was, how much was the cost of life in this particular city. I knew for the country in general, but I didn't know about this particular city. And after I moved in, I realized that I was somewhat underpaid. Anyway, the point is I was really financially struggling. So how do you deal with this? Jesus in the Bible faced the same question. And when he's asked, well, what should we do about tomorrow? Will there be enough food? Will there be enough clothes? He gives us a spiritual direction. He doesn't say, move around, apply for a second job, or try to find some savings, borrow money. He says, don't be afraid. Just be still. And he says something very clear. He says, focus on your relationship with the infinite, and everything else shall be added into it. He does not say poverty is normal or suffering is your way of life. Quite the opposite, actually. He says that it is natural to have abundance. Not that we boast around with money, just it is natural to express completeness and fullness. And that's what happened in this situation. There was a point where it was becoming very difficult. So I was really praying, really listening, because praying is really about listening, not accepting the darkness, but just knowing there's a way forward, finding the light. And it took several weeks. And the first thing that happened is that a sense of peace came. Nothing changed humanly, but that's critical. A sense of peace is critical. Because if you remember, whatever happens in thought has an impact on our experience. We're not responsible to the challenges we have, but we can deal with those mentally. When we yield to the sense of the divine, that change of consciousness, that sense of peace brings a change. And a few weeks after this sense of peace came, a woman at work was about to leave the job, and she asked me if I could help her with the move. She was single and she wanted help. I agreed to it, and she knew nothing of my financial situation. Didn't share that with anyone, but she invited me to move over and to help her with the move. As I arrived at her apartment, it was a large studio apartment. She explained that when she moved in, actually she duplicated all the furniture and everything she had back at home in the apartment that she had back there. She duplicated everything. It was her choice. But she added that it was so kind of me to take time to help her that she was happy to give me anything I wanted in the apartment, because she would have to give it away or sell it anyway. She said, you like this sofa? Take the sofa. There were some nice kitchen knives in the kitchen. I remember the type that I could never afford. I felt. She said, "Oh, you like the knife? Take the knives." And I asked her, "But are you sure? But don't you need the money?" She said, "No, really. My mind is made. It's all yours." So up to this point, my family still have 2 sofas that she gave. The knives are still somewhere. We still have things, and it really blessed our family beyond measures. It was not a coincidence. It was not a coincidence. When we yield to the divine, when we yield to our highest sense of God, really, then beautiful things happen. And it may sound too good to be true, but look at what Jesus was saying. He said, "Whoever is like a little child will enter the kingdom of God." In my mind, Jesus was not talking about a physical place. He was just saying that this consciousness of harmony is attainable by anyone, including children. The other day, it was, I think, last week, one of my daughter, one of the smallest one, second to last, came at breakfast, and he says, "Daddy, something happened last night." I said, well, darling, what happened? She said, "I had a nightmare. I thought that the Gruffalo, little monster, was chasing me. I could not sleep." So I didn't say anything. I just let her speak. But, I prayed. In other words, instead of being caught up in the darkness or in the fear, she knew intuitively just to turn towards a sense of light, sense of maybe love. She didn't explain how she prayed. She just said, "I prayed." And she says, and then I was not afraid of the Gruffalo anymore. I could fall back to sleep. So what is our Gruffalo? Sometimes it's a financial situation. Sometimes it's disease. Sometimes it's something that happens nationwide. But I found that in every and each situation, there is an answer. If we're still, there's an answer just for us that will move us forward on our spiritual journey. For example, when I was praying, still praying about the Capitol situation and the attack on the Capitol a few weeks ago, I was really praying, but I was not doing something. I was just listening to see what do I need to understand? What's my understanding of it? What's my spiritual lesson? It was not about accepting what was happening. It was not even about trying to fight it. It was more having a spiritual perspective. And in that case, what was very clear to me, I don't know about you, you probably prayed about it too, was the government is upon his shoulder. It's a Bible line. That our sense of good, our sense of progress, our sense of life, our sense of joy, satisfaction, does not come from other human beings. We have a straight source, and that source is infinite love that meets all needs all the time. But you can have a big treasure just right there on the right side. If you keep looking on the left side, you'll never see it. You have to turn towards the light. And every one of us can do it. In a few minutes, I'll be taking any question you have. Remember that there are no bad questions. If the question pops up in your mind, it's probably popping up in many other people's thoughts, in India, in South Africa, or in California, or anywhere else. So feel free to ask that question. Again, to ask your question, it's very easy. If you're watching on the web, you have this speech bubble at the top left over there. You may need to tap the screen or hover your mouse. You'll see it. You type it, and then I'll get to Ed in London, and I'll receive on my phone in a few minutes. If you're watching on YouTube, you just type your question on Facebook on the comment line, and I'll get it equally. So that's very easy. So sometimes people ask me, well, do I regret not being a litigation attorney again? And the answer is no. I have so much more to understand about Christian Science. But we are all on a spiritual journey. Whether we found the book Science and Health last week, or if we've been studying all our life, we are all on our unique journey. We're not dependent on anybody on that journey, not on a lecture, not on a person. It's all about understanding more our connection with the infinite. Sometimes we're tempted when we're dealing with a challenge to apply ideas to solve the challenge, to say, well, it's a big challenge here. What can I do? I need to really pray to get it to go away. My experience is just to go back to the Bible. And Jesus says, doesn't say just apply those ideas to your challenges. Actually, healing is just a side effect. Healing, whatever the challenge, financial, country-wise, physical situation, healing, resolution is just a side effect. It's just a side effect of our better understanding of our relationship with the infinite, of the glimpses we can have of our connection with God. Sometimes it's not even about us. Sometimes we're concerned about family members or family, children, co-workers. It's the same. The burden is never on our shoulder. Remember Psalm 46, be still and know that I am God. And we can all do this. And I found that when consistently my motive is to understand more my relationship with the infinite, the fact that we are all spiritual, that our deep nature is spiritual. And what Jesus brought when the term Christ is mentioned was really Jesus' spiritual identity, the divine. And Jesus revealed that we have this divine in us, that we have this spiritual identity, that actually we're fully spiritual. So the more we understand our cause, God, the unique cause, we understand ourselves as the effect of that cause, and we can only find perfection and harmony. And prayer enables us to get a glimpse of who we are and our relationship with the universe. It's hard to stop there because I would really want to continue on, and there's so much more to say. However, now is the time to look at your questions. And so I'll take my phone right here and see what you have. So the first question is from Kathy. She says, great talk. Masks are such a focus now and a constant reminder of the COVID threat. Have you found a way to think about masks that helps? Good question. You know, if you were a PhD student in math, your life was math. You knew about super complicated theory of math. And if you were asked to go to maybe a college class, and you were listening and seeing them sharing ideas, and you could see the mistakes, you could see what was wrong and what's going on, what would be the loving approach with that class? Again, you have a PhD, you're an expert in math. What's your approach with that class? We'll just look at them and say, guys, don't you get it? You're really stupid, guys. And you would just do the equation on the blackboard. I'm sure you would not. You would find a loving approach to either say something if you felt they could not take it now, or if you felt there was a window even to maybe ask a question or to be silent. To me, masks are a non-issue. My issue is just a question of love. Am I loving or am I judging? Is the mask harming me? Where is everybody's protection? And I find that when I spend more time on knowing that everyone is safe, that everyone is maintained by God as we speak, then I can wear the mask, and I do that out of love, but it's not a concern anymore. Sometimes I forget it for half a second, but I'm reminded because someone has this, oh, yeah, I have the mask on. And people are grateful, and people can listen. Because I find that our job, and I think Jesus asked us to be agent of light, not agent of fear. And for many, this mask, not having the mask, creates fear. Let alone the fact that we have to abide by the law of the land, and so no thinking there. The law says it, we have to comply. That's how it works. But again, the mask doesn't take anything away from us or adds anything away from us. Thought is what matters. Thought is what matters. I could go on, but we can come back to this question. But good question. Thank you, Kathy. What about panic attacks? That's a single line question. What about panic attacks? Thank you. That's a very good question, because you know the agreement with those that are really sponsoring this talk now. The Christian Scientists in Ventura and in Ojai that are putting this talk together for you from California. The agreement was to have a 30-minute talk, so we have to condense things. But you're bringing a really good point when you talk about panic attacks. So to cut a long story short, I only talk about this type of prayer, which is listening, which I find the most helpful, just this sense of stillness inside. But sometimes it's not possible. One time, by doing something silly, I burned my hand really badly with a microwave and some liquid in there. I was really in pain. There was no way I could be just still and trying to listen. No, I had to have this sense of firmness. And it may come across as positive thinking, but it's not really. When you mentally say no, God is present, and you have this really strong sense of opposition, mental opposition, where you accept nothing else but good. It's not about ignoring the challenge. It's not about burying our head in the sand. It's about handling it spiritually. So in that case, I remember yelling, God is here, and other things. And that helped calm my thoughts. And I remember by being so vehement, so strong, then some stillness came. And then I was able to get my books, Science and Health, the Bible, just to quiet thought a bit more. And eventually there was no marks on the pain left first, and there was no marks on the hand, and it was a really very interesting healing for me. So whether it's a panic attack or a sense of anguish, something that's really invade us, just like if you knew that a thief was coming your way to enter a window of your house, and he was just running towards you, you would probably run and just really shut the window and the shutters. Well, sometimes prayers take that shape to this sense of strength. But that sense of strength is not the healing. It is, again, to get to this sense of quietness, this sense of peace that comes after the handling very strongly. And if you look there's a website called JSH Online, where you can read articles and testimonies on Christian Science. And the people like you and me have been healed of all types of situations, and you'll find that those situations have been fully resolved through prayer. Thank you. Another question now. Our whole family is afraid of cancer. Is there a way to overcome heredity? Thank you. You know, there are many components to prayer, but one thing that I like to remind myself is this assurance that prayer does heal, that perfection is present now, that prayer is us discovering it now. It's not being naive. There's thousands of authenticated healings of cancer and other things. We're talking about universal concepts. We're talking about something that has helped many. It's all about what Jesus says when he says, you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free. In modern language, we could say, you will know reality, your unique connection with the infinite, and that realization will set you free. It doesn't say it might help you, or sometime it does. You will know the truth will help you free. So I found that, number one, we cannot be impressed by the name of the disease, whatever it is. You know, Jesus says that evil is a lie, something that seems to be and is not. What's the substance of nothing? A lie. Well, a lie by any name is still a lie. It comes to our thought with power. It comes to our thought with a sense of fear, but we can reverse it by knowing it has no bearing in truth. And it is very helpful when we see those fear in our own thinking and we can see the track of heredity, because we can undo it mentally. We can absolutely realize that our connection and those, and that's very important, those dear family members' connection is intact. There is nothing that needs to be added to them or taken away from them, even if they're not with us anymore, that their connection with the infinite is intact. And we can gradually find more peace and undo the lie of heredity. Thank you. Good question. So a question from Doug. Now, how does one sustain inspiration if a problem seems to take a long time? Thank you, Doug. I see there are more questions. I'll try to be more concise with my answers so I can go through all those good questions. So how we do when we feel we're faced with a challenge, we have inspiration, but suddenly it seems to be taking on and on and on, and we feel not inspired anymore. Probably it's how do we handle discouragement? Number one, I find helpful to realize as I start to pray that perfection is already here. It's really the fog hiding the mountain. I don't need to make the mountain appear. I don't need to create the mountain. I don't need to take a shovel to build a mountain. Just the fog needs to go away. So that gives a sense of more freedom, that it's not for you to heal yourself. It's really about listening, and every day is different. And I take very seriously this sense of listening. You know, the inner voice sometimes makes us aware of the spiritual idea. So we have a sense of innocence, for example, or a sense of a glimpse of God. But sometimes that inner sense makes us do something. Sometimes, I don't know, I'm making it up, but we've been like reading the Bible for 4 hours, and we have a little still small thought that comes to our mind that says, go for a walk, take your backpack, drive an hour, and go in the forest for a walk. And can imagine as this idea comes, we feel, no, I need to focus on God, and no, I don't want to, that's distraction. Well, we need to pay attention, because sometimes the inner voice makes us do something. Those who are unemployed, sometimes they feel led to do something that they didn't want to do. By nature, that still small voice is surprising. So the point is, when we're dealing with what seems to be a chronic challenge, is to look at every day as a new day and to say, kind of in Jesus' words, Father, I'm all yours. Thy will be done. What is on my plate today? What do I need to know? What do I need to do? And then follow that guidance. And if you feel like going for a walk in the forest or taking a day off, even if it feels against your common sense, I would pray more. And if that still small voice feels clear, I would do it. And experience has shown that there was a healing I heard a month ago of someone doing this, walking in the field, and she saw a very big deer jumping. And she don't laugh, but she had her healing by seeing that deer jumping. Not that the animal had any healing powers, but the point is that she suddenly had a sense of grace, a sense of the universe caring for everyone. And that sense of grace was very powerful in her thought, and that healed her. So, Doug, the good news is you're fired. You're not in charge of your healing. God is. And it's about following God's leading every day. Question from Corinne. Can we help a sick family member who doesn't believe in God? Yeah. You know, I don't believe in God. No one believes in God. We understand God. It's about understanding God. But I see what you mean. Basically, can you help someone who does not seem to be interested in spiritual ideas? Well, for sure, you would not take your Bible and some Christian Science writings and rush into a hospital and opening all the doors and saying, guys, you got to read this. That would be highly unethical and unloving and unkind. We want to treat others as we would have them to treat ourselves. That's the golden rule. So with family member, we can do whatever we feel led to do or say with them. We can share, we can not share, but it doesn't really matter. At this point, our job is just to see what do we accept in consciousness. What do we accept in our thoughts? I'm pausing for a second here because I've got a very short story, but I don't want to go too long. But I'll say quickly, a man called me some month ago with COVID symptoms. But he didn't call me just for himself. He called me for his brother, who didn't know nothing about Christian Science, who he had been able to talk a tiny bit to, and then he went to coma. Didn't have any consciousness anymore. So he said, can we pray about me and about my brother? And I said, yes, of course. We cannot help but knowing the truth, knowing what is real. If you had, and it's going to be a silly example, but I hope it'll drive the point home. If you had on Halloween day a little boy coming dressed up as a witch or a monster, are you allowed to see his innocent nature, his true nature, or do you have to believe he's a witch or a monster? No, you got to know the truth. So that's what we did. That man, the brother, the first brother called me, got fully healed, and his brother in the hospital went back to consciousness and was fully healed despite the prognosis. So it does help. So it does not matter what we say or what we don't say, if we share a quote of the Bible or a healing. It matters most what we think. What do we accept in our consciousness? And that sense of peace will lead us to say the right thing or sometimes say nothing. Thank you. Good question. So this one. I have a hard time with Christian Science and the Christian Science Church, since it is associated with abuse and was used to cover up evil by my Christian Science parent, who told me evil isn't real, as Mary Baker Eddy said. I cannot believe evil isn't real. Oh, well, that's the limit of those live talk, me in Paris and you somewhere else in the world, because I feel like I want to hug you, because my experience with Christian Science is all about sense of peace, of joy, of support, of mutual support, of non-judgment and healing. It's just about this sense of being comforted, being reassured when we're scared. That's been my experience for me, for my children. How many healings we've had. It's been timely. It's been amazing. But you have a good point. You have a very good point, and thank you for bringing it up. That's possibly the hardest thing to understand. This whole concept, and to use your word, evil isn't real. That's the limits of world. That's the limits of words. Christian Science does not say that if you're in pain, well, you're not in pain really. Or if you have a terminal condition, well, you don't have a terminal condition. That's just an illusion. That would be ignoring it. No, it goes much deeper, much deeper. What it says, it goes back to Jesus and the sense of evil being a lie, but it goes deeper. What it says that what seems to be an experience of the body, or sometimes a family situation, but let's say pain and disease or challenge, what seems to be an experience of the body is actually a mental experience. If you like this topic, you can look into placebo effect, nocebo effect, and quantum physics. And there's an example of, it's the dual, let me think. Welcome back. There's an experiment in quantum physics. If you look at how the relationship is with consciousness and an experience, yes, it's a double slit experiment. If you look at the double slit experiment, which is fundamental in quantum physics, it'll give us some idea about what I'm talking about. So the idea, we're not saying it doesn't exist. We're saying it's a mental experience. Yes, it does show in the body. It can be a tumor or anything else. But we say it's a mental, an experience of consciousness. And as that consciousness that holds that challenge as real, scary, and painful, as this consciousness release that sense of fear, really, that releases this sense of admitting it as the reality and embraces a higher sense of light, a higher sense of actual, tangible harmony. Not words. When you can feel this harmony, we can feel this sense of peace and love. That shift in consciousness brings the healing. And when I was a lawyer, I was not interested in religious philosophy. I like practicality. And Christian Science is all about comfort, practical comfort. I don't pretend that I or anybody else practically practice it perfectly, but what I know is I found such a comfort that gives me this sense of continuing in that path. So really, really good question. So here it is. Other question. What is the Christ? What is our spiritual self? So mindful of the time. Well, Jesus says himself, he can do nothing of his own self. So Jesus was this unique man that revealed God to the world. But he said there's an element in him that was doing the work. That's the Christ. That's the Messiah, the Savior. That's the way through we have salvation. That's the Christ. And on a very practical level, when we pray, when that sense of that still small voice comes to our thinking, that's the Christ. That this inner sense of joy, inner sense of peace doesn't come from positive thinking or us thinking good spiritual ideas. It's bigger than us, and that's the Christ. When I talk about spiritual sense, it is about our spiritual identity, that there are more to us than bones and flesh, that actually we're made of spiritual ideas, that our sense of love, our sense of harmony, intelligence is not the product of a chemical reaction, that it has its source in this infinite principle, infinite intelligence that is our cause for all of us. You know, if you look at the book Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures, on the first few pages, it has a whole chapter that addresses this very question. So I think you can look there and you'll find it very, very enlightening, I hope. Another question from Ron. How to deal with fear of not taking the vaccine for public good? Let me think that again. I'll make sure I understand the question. So Ron, you're asking how to deal with the fear of not taking the vaccine for public good. Well, I'm not sure I understand the question, but public good and the vaccine. Well, number one, the good news about Christian Science, it doesn't tell us you should do this or do that. It tells you don't trust another person for your salvation. Just trust your connection with the infinite, and you'll be enlightened to do what feels right to you. No concession with the laws of the land. So if it's compulsory, you go for it. But you know, Mary Baker Eddy, who was faced with vaccination issues back then, said, if the law requires it, just take the vaccination and know that it cannot harm you. Because sometimes the fear is this, is if I put this product in my body, is this going to harm me? Well, is the vaccine bigger than God? No. Is the vaccine reversing the order of good? Impossible. So whatever happens with the vaccine, you're safe now. You're safe now. What you'll do based on the law of the land is just for you to decide. As far as public good, I think our contribution to humanity is how we pray for humanity. What I love about Christian Science is that it is not a selfish practice. It's about blessing humanity. And you know, when we dealt with this challenge with the man that had COVID symptoms, it was not about a man healing another guy. It was us being aware that infinite good is everywhere and universal for everyone. So everyone is included in this prayer. If you remember the Lord's Prayer, dear to many Christians, it starts with, Our Father, which art in heaven. Jesus doesn't say, oh, when you pray, pray my Father and forget the others. No, it's our Father. And there's a scientific component to it because those laws are universal. Is there a Jewish love and a Muslim love and atheist love? No, love is love. We all have access to it. Yes, true, those ideas have a Christian wording and have a history deeply rooted in Christianity, but they point to universal concepts, as Jesus' life exemplified. He was not just talking to his peers; he was talking to mankind. So don't worry about the vaccine. Do what's right, and not be afraid about consequences. So I have a question from Facebook from Lois Dominguez. And thank you, Lois, for asking a question. And so Lois, you ask, on your pre-talk a week ago, you expressed, so let me pause, pre-talk, because we got together with the Christian Scientists in Ventura and Hohai just to think through this talk, what would be helpful for humanity, what we could talk about. So we had a little pre-talk, and then I thought some more, and that's what we have today. So that's the pre-talk that Lois is referring to. On your pre-talk a week ago, you expressed some thought about not looking to our pasts with a negative bent. I hadn't thought how that is a form of malpractice so consciously before. Could you expand on that again, please? Well, Lois, I'll say you'll have to invite me again for another half an hour just on this topic. Well, I'm just teasing you. It is critical. The question is not about have you been abused when you were little? The question is not about I keep losing my job or I keep getting this recurring disease. That's not the point. The point is, what am I accepting as true right now? Right now. There is no tomorrow, no yesterday. It's about now. Jesus said that someone who's always looking at the past is not fit to the kingdom of heaven, for the kingdom of heaven, not fit for harmony. Why? Because what we hold in consciousness today impacts our today. So the point is not about the abuse. The point is how do you deal about it now? There was a time in my life where I suffered some form of abuse by some family member, and I remember there was a time where it felt I had to deal with it. Not talking to the person, it could not be done anymore. But I remember taking lots of time just to clean, you could say clean my past, but it was more accurately, clean my present from my past. What am I holding on to now? It does not matter that you felt that 2 + 2 equal 5 when you were a 5-year-old. What matters is what you hold in thought now. Sometimes it takes a lot of listening, sometimes it's fast, but the good thing is you're never stuck because of your past. Never, ever. Because what happens and what is important is your present consciousness of love. And whatever the darkness of the past is unknown to infinite love. It's always a lie. No more a lie. It was no more a lie then than it is now. So you can constantly address it and feel, no, I'm living now. You're always renewed. We're not a product of the past. Those are other theories. The Bible teaches us that we are renewed every day. Age is only a belief we hold in thought. We're renewed every day. And we can absolutely decide not to, like a sunbeam, to attach any darkness of the past to our present experience. But you should invite me again, just talk about this. Just teasing you. Question from Brooke from Facebook. Brooke Bowen. Thank you. Love what you spoke about. I have been overwhelmed by fear for a while after a very painful event, and I grow wary at times. This has given me fresh inspiration to not fight, but to yield again. Any additional thought for how to persevere from seeming and yielding fear? Sometimes there are some physical consequences that seemingly we attach to our past, or that psychologists and psychiatrists say, yeah, that's normal that you have that symptom or that situation now because of your past. And sometimes when we pray, especially when we got a sense of excitement that everything is possible, that everything can be healed, that we can find this sense of peace. Sometimes there's a human sense of excitement that, yeah, okay, I'm going to pray about it. And then we pray, and then we see some changes or not changes, and we judge our progress by the changes we see in our experience. Remember, some people having very fast heartbeats, sense of anguish. So the temptation is, okay, I'm going to pray, listen, and then see, oh yeah, my heartbeat is better now, or something I could not do in the past, I can do more. But that's wrong practice. The practice of Christian Science starts with our sense of peace and ends with our sense of peace. In a way, I could say it now, we ignore the side effect for now. We ignore the resolution. We keep it out of thought. What we want is to have that sense of peace and stay with this sense of peace. Yes, it feels better when the symptom is gone, but I find that it's really a trick that I should be aware of, that to just focus on spiritual ideas and have that sense of peace, and everything else shall be added into it. Otherwise, what happens is I have this sense of peace, this sense of perfection, and then I check matter, I check the situation to see, did I make any progress? Well, progress comes with that sense of peace. So Jesus says it, don't worry, just focus on God, and everything else shall be added into it. And to be perfectly honest, I'm still learning this. I had back challenge not so long ago, and I remember being in my garden with somewhat incapacitated, and I felt, well, I got to pray. And I felt, okay, I should not focus on the symptoms or even on the desire to have the symptoms being gone. I just need to focus on God. And I remember thinking, yeah, that's what I tell people, but it's painful. I'd like it to be gone. Of course, I didn't stay there. But when we know the way forward, then we don't get tricked. And we don't get smiley if we see, oh, yeah, that physical condition is gone, or discouraged, oh, my gosh, still there. We just stay with that sense of peace. We just keep listening to what we need to know. And we keep acting on that still small voice. And I found that fast or long, but invariably, it does bring progress. And yes, ultimately, as a side effect, whatever was occupying our thought and worrying us gets resolved. Question from Sasha. How to forgive a person whom you forgave, and then did you greater harm, and to be free of resentment, anger, hurt, and anxiety of the future. So there's two parts. And two, to overcome negative reaction to abuse and hypocrisy. Well, if I go quick, forgiveness. What is forgiveness? What is not forgiveness, and what is forgiveness? There was a woman at work, a friend of mine, and she was abused. And personally. Not forgiveness would be to, in a false Christian sentiment, say, that's fine. Jesus says, love thine enemy, so I guess that's forgive him. That's fine. But you can feel inside our thought there is no peace. We just it's more being like a doormat. I mean, it's better to be a doormat than to just throw a piano on their head. If you can do that. But it's just not forgiveness. True forgiveness comes, and you can see when it's true forgiveness. I want to qualify that. What I mean by true forgiveness is that forgiveness that heals. The forgiveness I've experienced that brings healing, and that forgiveness comes with a sense of peace. I wish I had longer to talk about this, but very quickly, basically, you take off the mask of evil. You take off the mask of the abuse. Not that you ignore it, but you look beyond it to find the cause that makes that person, to find the divine sense, the divine identity of that person. Takes lots of work sometimes, especially when we've been abused, and especially because the first thought that comes to all of us when we are faced with this situation is, why would I have to do anything? I'm the victim there. Why would I do anything? Well, again, let's go back to consciousness. As long as we hold on to darkness in consciousness, we'll keep experiencing it. But when our thought yields to this sense of perfection, purity, and this is what happened with my friend with abuse at work, the solution got completely solved the minute that she included the abuser in her thinking to see him spiritually, if I can say this quickly. So again, Christian Science is not about ignoring evil. It's about handling it as not a spiritual product, as something that, yes, parades as powerful and strong, but that can be completely reversed by us yielding to the divine. And it does bring great resolution. So thank you, Sasha. Question from Sam Hall. I am quite new to Christian Science, and I'm wondering how you're supposed to pray. I know it's different than in traditional church, for example, but how am I supposed to do it? So I've talked quite a bit about prayer, so I don't know how much I need to say. I'll say one thing. That book, Science and Health, has a whole chapter on prayer. And it does speak to you, because it's going to melt in your own thinking any sense of prayer that you might have that needs to be refined. And I would say there is not one way to pray. Every prayer is respectable. But that prayer that is conducive of change of consciousness, that's the one that brings healing as a side effect, as we've seen. Sometimes people say you should not be repeating words when you pray. It's not a good way to pray. Well, yeah, I rarely repeat words when I pray, and Jesus even says prayer is not about repeating words. It's in Matthew 6, I think. But whatever takes your thought towards God is the right prayer. But don't stay there. You have to expect that sense of peace, that sense of ego melting, that you're not praying, you're just listening, that letting God do. Remember one day being in the office feeling really unwell, and for whatever reason I was not being very diligent, so I thought it would go away. So I was very busy at work, and so I just let the symptom go, but actually they grew and grew up to the point where I could not work anymore. So I isolated myself in a conference room to pray for myself. And I had a bit of sense of self-righteousness. Yeah, I'm going to pray now. I was silly not to pray before. I'm sure I'm going to have a healing now. But I got more discouraged. Symptoms were hard to sustain, and I felt coming back to work. And then it dawned on me what I was doing. We're not God. We're not the source of the universe. In Psalm 23, this beloved psalm, it says, "The Lord is our shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want." So in classifications, we're not shepherds, we're lamb, sheep. We're here to listen, to be guided. That shifted completely my way of thinking. Ego was gone. I was really willing to listen. And very specifically in that case, I knew that God was sustaining me and everyone else. That harmony is the law of our being. It's not imagination, it is actually the law of our being. Yes, biology is wrong. There is something beyond that. Molecules, that is the law of harmony that can be demonstrated right now. And that brought a healing. But I would check out Science and Health again. And I would not pretend I have not more to learn about prayer. All of us have more to learn about prayer. And you will not pray the same way today as yesterday. Prayer is very unique. So you'll find your way, and it'll be great. A question from Anne. Please address loss of vision, especially as people age. You all have good questions. They're just all really amazing questions. And I don't want to go for too long. I'll just say, there is a book that I found very interesting. And it's a book written by Ellen Langer, who was a psychologist at Harvard Medical School. And she had no relationship with Christian Science. But it's called Counterclockwise. And anyway, in this book, she has an experiment on age. And basically, she shows that the more people expected to age and thought about aging, the more they were exhibiting what is usually associated with aging. But she did different experiments, and I won't go into details now, where for various reasons, people were led to express more youth, to express a sense of regeneration. I'm being a bit vague here because I don't want to go into too much of the experiments, which is very interesting to read about. The point is, what she discovered was age was for a large part a mental component. It is natural to be healthy and have harmony forever. I have friends who have had to human sense very large age and 3-digit age, and they were still playing tennis or skiing and have a sense of life. Age is not a disease. It is mostly something we're going to say yes to or say no to. You even hear sometimes people say, oh my gosh, I'm 83 now. I wish I'd prayed about age when I was 22. Oh, it's too late now. No, what we talked about. It's not about if you thought for 50 years that 1 + 1 equals 21 or 11, if you believe for 50 years that 1 + 1 equals 11, well, it makes sense. You can right now know that 1 + 1 not only equals 2, but is always equal to. So loss of vision, hearing, walking, all those things associated with age can be absolutely reversed. And how? By not praying about them, but by knowing that you express the wholeness of God. That you never go from being half full as a little girl and then fuller at 40 and then less full now. You go from wholeness to wholeness. And by consistently holding on to your wholeness, yielding to your sense of God, those challenges have been reversed. But again, there is no magical recipe or magical words to say. It's going to be your unfoldment, but you can be assured that you can express the fullness of life just right now. And if you look at testimony of healings, there are many, many examples that are very inspiring, very inspiring. So the good thing is we're never a victim, and there's always a way forward. Then a comment from Rose. Sometimes I get frustrated that most people are unaware of Christian Science and its great power, and there are wrong ideas about what it is. Well, I can relate to this, and I remember a family member who was very enthusiastic about Christian Science, and I remember she was almost my adopted granny, my grandma of heart, and she was an active Christian Scientist. And I remember her one day; she was still very active in driving her car, and I remember her one day saying that she had been stopped because maybe she was going too fast, and so it was in France. So the police asked her to look at the vehicle, open the trunk, and that was a standard process then. And as she got out of the car and opened the trunk, she could find Christian Science literature, and she had to interrupt them. They were about to tell her about the speaking and stuff, and she had to interrupt them and say, "Gentlemen, sorry, I cannot help. Do you know about Christian Science?" And she told them about their relationship to God, and I think she didn't get a ticket in the end. But I was very impressed by this story, especially because I felt I love those ideas. I had many healings, but I felt I could not talk to my neighbors at work. There was something in me that, yes, maybe you're right, that people will not understand. Or what if they find it bizarre? What if they feel that we're all just a pack of molecules? What if I make a fool of myself? But you can see, even when I voice them, those are mental suggestions. Those are just darkness. And I found that consistently when we recognize that it's not about us sharing the word or not sharing the word, it's always going back to that prayer and being led to do what we feel led to do. So in some cases, in my experience, I remember being in a train, and there was a man reading the Bible next to me, and he was from a church. I could tell that he's very unhappy with Christian Science and its theology, because there's many ways to interpret the Bible, and they didn't like the interpretation. So I could see that he was from that church, but I could see there was something wrong with the man. He was not feeling well, but he had the Bible, so we talked about the Bible, and I was able to bring a sense of comfort. I never shared anything about Christian Science per name. I just shared comfort, and he was very comforted. As a follow-up, I met him in the TGV, the high-speed train in France, and we're not meant to meet each other again, but I gave him my email. He emailed me back and forth. So I did share the source of those ideas and gave him the name Christian Science, and he moved forward. But the point is that in that situation, it was not about, I need to share something with a name. In other situations, I just pray. I don't say anything because I see there is no receptivity. And it's just about being men and women, just about seeing what God wants us to do with us. And so we don't have a burden. It's about shining, and there's tons of ways of shining. So I just have this comment. Someone misinterpreted something I did. I feel guilty, unable to explain to them how to erase past. That's a good question, and that may be our last question. So if you have really a last question or last something, you can type it there. I'm be happy to take it. Otherwise, I'll take this as our last question. And as I pause for half a second, you can be in touch with those dear Christian Scientists in Ohio and in Ventura. They're just people like you and me. They, at one point in their life, found those ideas. They love those ideas. And so that's why they have a church there. And Mary Baker Eddy did not want to create an organization because she deeply felt that what matters is our unique path, our unique relationship to the infinite. So this congregation honors this. It's just people getting together to share ideas, to read together, but to respect everybody's path. So they're here for you. So you'll see on the slide that there is contact details. So if you would like to get a copy find where you can find a copy of Science and Health. If you have a question, if you'd like to know where you can find a Christian Science practitioner near you to help you with a challenge, if you have more questions, feel free to be in touch with them. They'd love to help. Also, if you would like to share this talk with somebody else, it'll be available as a replay for about 3 months. So you can watch it again and have the replay. So now back to our possibly last question. I'll read it again because I had my little speech about the church here. Someone misinterpreted something I did. I feel guilty, unable to explain to them how to erase the past. That's a beautiful last question, because are we stuck? Can we repair the broken vase? Well, the good news, we can. We can. And I've seen many instances where things that were beyond reach absolutely, completely got solved. Not in the way we thought. Well, the broken vase is broken and all the pieces are scattered in the sea or in the ocean. What can I do? But that's a human way to solve the challenge. As we focus on, number one, yes, when we make a mistake, it is helpful to realize that mistake. But it's not about hitting our head with a hand. It's not about hitting our head with our stick or our hand. It's about recognizing when we make a mistake. Sometimes, yes, selfishness or a sense of greed or a sense of fear slips in our relationship. It does happen to me, may happen to you too. I'm not saying it's the case for you here, but that's maybe the case. Whatever we feel wrong, it's good to be aware of it, but we don't stay in there. Even while the bad thing was happening, even then, perfect love was in charge. And it's not about what happened 10 minutes ago. It's about what you hold in thought now. So you can expect a full sense of refreshment, spiritual refreshment, a sense of moving forward, maybe in a direction that you didn't even think about. Sometimes things get solved without any action on our part. Things get solved and people around us says, well, that's a miracle. How did you don't even forget how it got solved? This is a miracle. Well, of course, our state of consciousness and what we allow in thought is the explanation. There's a miracle there. A plane flying is no more a miracle. Now we know why a plane flies. Or sometimes we feel late to take an action. And sometimes we do not want to take that action because we feel there's no connection, or I can't do this, or don't have the courage. Well, if like Jonah, we don't want to end up in the belly of a whale, we'd better listen. So there's always a way forward. And that's exciting just to find out, to say, okay, fine, I'm giving it up, Father. Now, that sense of still small voice needs to guide me to find a way forward, again, silently or taking an action. I need your permission now, because I said it was the last question, but Tina sent a question. So are you okay if I answer Tina's question? Well, you won't need to take a flight back home. You don't need to take a train back home. You don't need to leave Paris to go back to your hometown. So I think I'll answer Tina, because you got a bit of time. So Tina, how do you handle the fear of what others are thinking about a visible physical problem? Wonderful question. Wonderful question. It is never about the others. And I'll make it quick and I'll expand for half a second. It is not about what others think about you. It's what you accept in your consciousness about others. There are no others out there thinking bad thoughts. All there is divine mind. All there is God expressing himself or herself. All there is God's expression. So it's critical that when we deal with a situation, I remember a situation that was very scary to a medical doctor that was involved, and that I was asked to do some bandages in a situation. And in that situation, the patient did not want to have medical involvement. He had seen so many healings in his life, he was confident that he would be healed again. And there was a person supporting, family member supporting there too. What was interesting is that there will be a full healing. And the doctor who saw that after shared that he was petrified by fear. He knew he would not see his patient again alive, based on his experience. Gladly, he witnessed a full healing about a day after, gradually, and then eventually full healing. what was interesting is that the deepest fear of that person, this loving doctor, didn't hinder the healing. Why? What can darkness do? The darkest darkness, and you take a very small match. What does it do? What does this very small, tiny, the biggest darkness, tiny, small match? Well, the light instantly dissolves the darkness. And can the darkness invade the light? No, it's impossible. So when that thought comes to thought, Tina, I don't ignore it. I include in my prayer that though the others can only see what God sees. That's all there is to see, and they are the full expression of harmony and can only see harmony. And I can feel that the job is done when I'm not thinking, I'm not worried about it. And you could have 65,000 people chanting that the earth is flat. That would not make you fall off the earth if you take a boat, because the earth is round to physical sense. Good question. So I think that's it, but let me see. Just Sasha is asking, she says, Mary Baker Eddy said that there are no reactions. How to not have reactions? Well, I think Sasha wants me to come back in. I think the sense of reactions to me is built in ego. When we feel afraid, when we feel we have to do something, when we feel got to even refrain from doing something. You know, in Science and Health, Mary Baker Eddy says something very helpful on the chapter on prayer and on page 1, the very first page. And she talks about that prayer that heals. And she speaks about the component of that prayer, spiritual understanding of love, of God and self-love. But she says all those components need to be combined, I quote on page 1, line 6, combined with self-immolation. And to me, reaction is a product of a form of willfulness and ego. When we let go, when we love our enemy, when we see perfection, when everyone sees imperfection, then that sense of reaction naturally dissolves. Not that we become doormat, makes us more active, but we are more intuitively guided, or we have a thinking that is full of peace and have a sense of harmony, and we don't feel this reaction. I think we're all working at this, but the good thing is to know that, yes, it can be overcome. So thank you, Sasha, for being the last person to ask a question. Again, don't feel that you may have a question in 5 minutes from now or in an hour from now. Well, do get those books. If you have a Bible, if you can get a Science and Health, do get those books. And as I said at the very beginning, book said itself, time for thinkers has come. It's about thinking. It's about struggling with those ideas. See what they mean to you. See the sense of peace they mean to you. It's even fun. At the end of the book, Science and Health, there is 100 pages of people who got healed just by reading the book. They were not aware that the book could heal them, but you can see that their change of consciousness, whatever they need to learn, has a side effect, the healing components. So we sometimes want to ask someone for the answer, but the answers are in there for you through your still small voice. However, if you still have an answer, feel free to contact the dear friends in Ojai and the Ventura, and I'm sure they'll direct you to the right source of help. I know I've called many practitioners in my life. Sometimes I was very annoying with many questions and what about this, what about that, and I've always received a very warm welcome. So I know you'll be receive much love and welcome. Just checking, there is not a super important question come in, but I think that was it. I don't want to leave anyone behind. No, that was it. So have a beautiful end of morning if you're in California, or end of the day here in France. I'm gonna pack up and go and meet my children again, and I wish you a very, very beautiful day. And what I look forward for you is a spiritual idea that will just help you get one step further on the spiritual journey. And healing is always the side effect. So a big thank you, merci, and thank you for your attention.